over some really interesting stuff this time. Articles, thoughts, even some stuff you wrote yourself. It seems like everyone's talking about these anti-Elon Musk posters popping up in London.
Yeah, it's been pretty hard to miss. And I think what makes this so fascinating, so intriguing, is that these posters, right, they're just like this little snapshot, this tiny window into how people are starting to feel about someone like Elon Musk. I mean, love him or hate him, he's a pretty powerful guy.
Definitely. I mean, he's everywhere, right? And that's what we're doing today. We're going deeper. We're not just going to skim the surface. These posters are a symptom of something bigger, something we need to unpack. So what are the real issues here? What are the root causes of all this? So that's what we're diving into today.
Okay, so first things first, let's lay it all out. What are we actually looking at here? From what you've sent me, it's not just a one-off thing. It seems like for the past few weeks, all over London, these posters have been popping up. They've got slogans like, let me see, stop Musk's exploitation, ooh, and not your plaything. Strong stuff.
Yeah, and the fact that they're all over, it's not just someone messing around. It seems pretty organized. And yeah, those phrases, I mean, wow, they're really hitting hard. They're meant to get a reaction, that's for sure. And from what we've seen, well, they definitely are.
Oh, yeah, they've definitely gotten people's attention. Your sources, they show just how much buzz these things are creating. People are curious, that's for sure. And yeah, there's been a lot of debates and pretty heated conversations going on. This isn't something folks are just ignoring.
Definitely not. And we can't forget, all this is happening in the context of what's being called the Musk effect.
Yeah.
Right? Like this guy just draws these really strong reactions from people, both good and bad.
It's that duality. Yeah, that's what's so interesting. I mean, think about it. Elon Musk, he runs SpaceX, Tesla, Neuralink, the Boring Company. Like, he's involved in these companies that are pushing the limits, breaking barriers in all these different areas. For a lot of folks, he's like a symbol of progress, the guy tackling the really tough problems.
Totally. There's so much excitement around all of it, right?
Yeah.
Electric cars going to Mars, brain-computer interfaces. I mean, it's pretty mind-blowing stuff. But then there's the other side. Like you said, the side these posters are tapping into. All the criticism, the concern about his behavior, his business practices. Not everyone is on board with how he does things.
And you see this tension playing out really clearly on Twitter, or I guess I should say X now. It's like this direct line to millions of people, completely unfiltered, but then we see how his tweets, they can have some real-world consequences, and not always in a good way. Stock prices going haywire, people getting really angry, even ending up in court.
It's like that direct connection amplifies everything, the good and the bad. Which brings us to the central question, right? I mean, what's the overall impact here? Is Musk a force for good driving us forward? Or is this a case of power without any real checks and balances?
And that's why these posters in London, they're more than just street art. They represent something bigger. They're a way for people to make their voices heard, a very public statement.
Right, this is about more than just tweets. These posters, they're targeting a whole range of issues, how he runs his businesses, his public behavior. Like, we're talking about how workers are treated at the Tesla factories, and of course, everything that's been going on with Twitter since he took over.
Exactly. And the message, it's not just about innovation anymore. They're trying to shift the conversation to focus on power, on wealth, on what they see as exploitation. They're saying, hey, look, Musk's actions, they have consequences. This is real life. And it's affecting people.
And they're not doing this just anywhere. They're doing this in London. It's not a coincidence.
Oh, absolutely not. London, it's like this global center, right? Finance, media, it's all there. Plus, the people there, they tend to be pretty well-informed, politically engaged. And let's not forget, London has a long history of protest. People aren't afraid to speak their minds.
Right. So by putting these posters in London, they're trying to reach a much wider audience, including all the big players, the financial and media elites, the folks who, in some ways, operate in a similar world to Musk on this huge international scale.
Exactly. And there's this growing feeling, and your sources reflect this, that the super rich, they're not just these detached geniuses anymore. There's a real worry that their actions, they can actually threaten some pretty fundamental things. Yep. Things like democracy, fairness, equality. People are starting to see them as a potential risk.
Oh. So let's dive into the specifics. What are the actual criticisms? Your sources, they seem to focus on 4 main areas. Let's start with the whole issue of labor practices. It's been pretty contentious, especially when it comes to those Tesla gigafactories.
Yeah, there have been a lot of reports, a lot of concerns about working conditions at those factories. People are saying that workers are pushed too hard, that they have to work these incredibly long hours, and that the safety measures, they just aren't good enough.
And then you have the whole issue of unions, right? Musk, he's been very vocal about his opposition to unions at Tesla. And for a lot of people, that's a big red flag. They see it as putting profits ahead of the well-being of the workers. It feeds into that whole narrative of corporate greed and exploitation that the posters are talking about.
Moving on to the environmental side of things get a little more complicated. On the one hand, you can't deny that Musk has been a big champion of sustainability. I mean, Tesla, electric cars, solar energy, that's all pushing us in a greener direction. But then you have SpaceX, and that's where the criticisms start to come in.
Right, he's been a huge force behind moving away from fossil fuels.
Yeah.
But with SpaceX launching all these satellites, people are worried about what it's going to do to Earth's orbit. Like all that space junk, the potential for militarizing space even more. It's something people are definitely thinking about.
And then there's this other argument that comes up a lot. The idea that focusing on these big futuristic projects, like colonizing Mars, maybe it's distracting us from dealing with the problems we have right here, right now, problems that are affecting people today.
Yeah, like are we looking too far ahead while ignoring what's happening in our own backyard?
Yeah.
And then you have the third big area, which is all about tech monopolies and the concentration of power. And this is where Twitter, or X, I should say, comes in. That acquisition has really stirred things up.
That's for sure. It's been a very controversial move, and a lot of people are worried about how much influence Musk now has over what people see and talk about online. Owning a platform like that, it gives him so much power to shape public opinion, to control the flow of information.
And all the changes he's made since taking over, they've really fueled those concerns. Less content moderation, letting back users who were banned before, and some would say a bias towards certain viewpoints. It's creating this fear that misinformation, hate speech, it's all just going to spread unchecked. And that's a threat to democracy, to how we function as a society.
And then finally, you have Musk himself, his personality, his leadership style. It's hard to ignore how he acts, especially on social media. He's constantly picking fights, saying things that rub people the wrong way.
He's definitely not afraid of confrontation. And that direct, unfiltered style, it's created this image of him as unpredictable, impulsive, some people would even say erratic.
And for a lot of folks, it's more than just a personality quirk. They see it as reckless, a dangerous disregard for the consequences of his actions, especially given how much influence he has.
So with all this going on, all this criticism, all these different angles, I guess it's no surprise that these posters in London have really gotten people talking, online, offline, everywhere. It's a hot topic for sure.
Absolutely. You have Musk's supporters, and they're very vocal. They see him as this visionary, a genius, a modern-day Prometheus who's bringing us these amazing new technologies, electric cars, space travel, AI. It's all game-changing stuff.
Yeah.
And they say all the criticism, well, it's just jealousy or people who just don't get what he's trying to do.
They see him as essential, right? Someone who's willing to break the mold, to push boundaries, to make the impossible possible. But then there's the other side, the critics, and those posters. They're like a visual representation of their point of view.
And for those critics, those posters are a reminder. They're saying, look, you can be rich, you can be powerful, but you can't be above scrutiny. They see Musk as the embodiment of everything that's wrong with unchecked corporate power. The idea that a handful of people can have so much influence over our lives, over our politics, our media, even how we think. That's scary stuff.
And you see this divide reflected in how the media is covering all of this. Some outlets, they focus on the accomplishments, the innovations, the good that Musk is doing. Others, they zero in on the controversies, the ethical questions, the downsides. It's like they're painting two completely different pictures.
It's this extreme polarization, right? It's almost impossible to find a middle ground. People see him as either this hero, this innovator who's saving the world, or as this reckless billionaire who's a danger to us all.
And those posters, they tap into this desire for accountability. When people have this much power, there's a natural instinct to make sure they're not abusing it.
So as we wrap things up here, it's clear that these posters in London are just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. They're part of a global conversation about the role of billionaires in our world, what their impact is, how much power they should have.
Right. And Musk, with his larger-than-life persona, his polarizing actions, he's right at the center of it all. And it doesn't look like the scrutiny is going away anytime soon. If anything, it's probably just going to intensify as he gets more and more influential.
And that's interesting in itself, right? The fact that people are speaking up, that they're willing to challenge these powerful figures. Maybe it's a sign that things are starting to change, that we're moving away from this era where the super rich could just do whatever they wanted without any pushback.
It definitely makes you think, will this lead to more accountability? Or will these individuals just find ways to keep accumulating more and more power? It's a really complex issue and one that's not going away anytime soon. Hopefully this deep dive has given you, the listener, some food for thought, some new perspectives to consider. Thanks for joining us.